In this episode, we are going to be reviewing The Priest's Wife from 1970, which was directed by Dino Risi, and it starred Marcello, Mastroanni, and Sophia Loren. Welcome to Robert Bellissimo at the Movies. This is a film podcast where I explore movies from all over the world and talk about how these stories were told on film. I want to welcome back Gio Crisafulli, who is a writer, director, and actor. He has an upcoming feature that's going to be in production called Children of God. His company is called Gio Cinema, and he recently had a short film called Amore Latino, which was picked as a semi-finalist in the Roma Shorts Film Festival. So Joe, welcome back. I'm so glad that you could join me again today.
Thank you very much, Robert. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. You know, we're talking about The Priest's Wife. I'm really curious what you thought of it, because I thought it was really, really interesting. So had you seen it before, or was this the first time you saw it when we decided to talk about it?
Well, like a lot of Italian cinema, it's something that I saw at least great large sections of on Italian television as a teenager, and I revisited it again a little while ago when we decided to talk about it. All I could find was a German bootleg copy.
Same here.
Yeah, thankfully, it wasn't in German. It was in Italian, didn't even have German subtitles. Oddly enough.
Oh, okay, because I could only find the English dubbed one. It's not on any streaming service. And like I said, I could only find the dubbed one. So it's interesting. So you found the Italian version.
Yeah, on YouTube. It was in Italian.
Oh, I did see that one, but there's no subtitles, right?
Yeah, but
right.
The opening and closing credits are in German. It was odd. But yeah, I realized I had seen pieces of it. Dino Risi, he's an important director, not one that necessarily touched me in my formidable period, let's say, when I would have come across this movie on Italian television. But he did like the original Scent of a Woman. He's a very prominent director.
Yeah.
Obviously the two stars are hugely prominent, but
right.
In Italy, seeing it on television, it may be blasphemous to say, but even if you come across Marcello Mastroanni or Sophia Loren on TV, it's much more easily dismissed as like the wallpaper, as opposed to in the States, when if Sophia was on TV, you could hear a pin drop in my house, So yeah, it was definitely a revisit to the motion picture for me when I saw it again recently.
So what was your feelings this time around?
Oh, I mean, I loved it.
Yeah.
The beginning, it's you hear The Priest's Wife, and that itself is a provocative title. In Italian film, there's no question that you're talking about a Roman Catholic priest, not like a Protestant, reverend or minister or anything
right.
like that. But from the moment you play the movie, you're thinking this is, the Priest's Wife, this is going to be some heavy stuff. But from the very beginning, the soundtrack,
yeah.
Like, what is this? And this homicidal woman done wrong in a car. I mean,
oh, I love that.
Hilarious.
That was so great.
Amazingly choreographed. It's so Italian, and very entertaining. And then I think as the movie progresses, it really does get, while remaining a comedy, it does get deeper into serious considerations that the very notion of the movie lends itself to, in terms of the priesthood, the church, women's liberation, for instance, and just love at a basic human level. Mm-hmm. So I really liked it, even though the ending, it's not what most people probably hope to see in a movie starring the two of them.
Yeah, no, I agree. I also found that the blend of humor and drama I felt was so organic. Like it didn't feel like they were just trying to make it lighter at certain points. I just thought everything worked so well, and just reading just different people's opinions about it online, that was always the biggest thing, that there was like, well, this isn't that funny, or the ending is really sad, and why are they calling this a comedy? But I'm like, but not everything in life or in genre has to be boiled down to one label. And people like everything. I think people are very comfortable like putting things in certain categories because that's what they're going to expect. But I just thought the blend worked so well. Did you feel that it had a good combination of the different strokes of emotion to make it like a dramedy, so to speak?
Yeah, along those lines that you're suggesting, I thought it was really seamless,
Me
and
too. Yeah.
to such an extent that I thought it was extremely funny. And
Oh yeah.
when he it's a scene as potentially solemn as him going to his former instructor for advice, and yet the guy's telling him that, what does he say? He says something like, think of mothers, and especially in Italy, because as with Sophia in the movie, um, people just because of social conditions don't leave the house as early as Americans do. Certainly, they're as rich and modern a country Italy became, you still had a situation where, because of the financial nature of things, people stayed at home longer. You graduated college several years older than you would in the States, surely. And even if you had someone you were really serious with, it took a while to earn up enough money to either build or buy your own
Right.
home. So
Right.
you may be 30 years old and live at home in Italy, and a lot of cultures that aren't North American, I guess.
Right.
So he's saying, think of mothers, they understand that you're probably, I'm paraphrasing, that you're up to lowercase a adult things, but better that she doesn't know about it. As long as you come home and have and eat her soup, that's fine. uh,
Yeah.
and I think that this is being told to him by basically his superior
Yeah.
in the church, and I thought that was hilarious. And so many of the scenes of the priest, they're so just matter of fact about these things. I
Yeah.
thought it was hilarious.
Oh no, I agree, because he basically, I love that moment too, and he, comparing the church is like a jealous mother,
Yeah,
and so just have your affairs outside. You don't have to take it so seriously, because you don't see. I can't even think of too many movies where you see a priest fall in love with a woman, a Roman Catholic priest, and then literally tries to get them to change their position to allow him to get married to Sophia Loren. I've certainly there are a good number of films with priests, but and it was interesting to me. I never even thought that would be something that someone would try to do. I'm sure some priests have tried to do it, and I'm certainly sure that people have had affairs and just kept it hush hush, which ultimately is what happens. Like they promote him in order to shut his mouth, right? And just have your apartment and keep her nearby. And I love at the end, like she totally reads between the lines, and for one thing, she finds out that she's pregnant, and then she doesn't tell him, and he keeps saying, well, we might have to wait a few months, and why are you getting promoted? Why would you get promotion if you're in conflict with them? And he doesn't really, he's extremely vague. And I just love how they kept cutting to her, and she's putting it together, and then us as the audience was putting it together. And Loren's reactions were so perfect. She's such a great actress. Everything in this film, her commitment to the moment and to the actions. Even the first scene that you mentioned, where she's trying to hit that guy with a car because she found out that he had been married for 4 years and had kids, and even though she's been with him for years and didn't know. I just thought that was so great because it's all in the expression and there's no dialogue, and you see him, he was seduced by the church. He's just watching him and he's, praying and he's looking at the cardinals or the other priests and whatever ceremony was happening. And I love that, no dialogue, no happy, no one said anything, but yet we know exactly, what's going to happen. I don't know if that was your experience.
Well, I'm sure, acting is not talking, acting is
right.
And I feel that someone like Sophia, as is the tendency, I think, more for beautiful actresses than it is for good-looking actors, is that people often, because of their iconography and just how beautiful they are, can overlook the fact that they may be a terrific actress.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And I think she definitely, she's such an icon. We overlook the fact that she is a terrific actress.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, in terms of, and you're right, she kind of ends the movie, not miles away from where she started it, or clearly potentially down that road again. But now it's the whole weight of the bureaucracy of the church that is in cahoots, and maybe he is I don't want to say victim, because he certainly can make his decisions. Why is he accepting a promotion? Forget being offered. People can connive, they can try to cajole, they can try to entice you with better offers, so to speak.
Right.
But why is he excited about the possibility? And I think that's a recurring theme through his character throughout the movie that I think is particular to Catholic clergy, as opposed to say rabbis, for instance. And this is something that, being the offspring of a Roman Catholic priest and a Roman Catholic nun, at least when I was old enough to realize that was not as normal as I just assumed. I talked about with my parents. I mean, it was part of the air that we breathe. It wasn't like, oh, Mom, Dad, can I ask you? And I think something that's very resonant through his character throughout the movie is, I don't get the feeling that he is someone that took the cloth because of issues. There's a theme throughout it that you're hiding from how you feel about me behind your cloth, or this air of respectability, or the church. And I didn't get the feeling that he took the cloth because he's hiding for whatever reasons. My father could tell you, he was in the seminary from the time he was 14 on, the myriad reasons people may innocently or predatorily hide behind the cloth. My impression was that he did have these true convictions, and it's a Catholic priest, not a rabbi, maybe not an imam, who has to face the fact that there are two equally valid truths in his life: his faith, his religion, and his love for another human being. That, because he's Catholic, come into conflict. And I thought the movie did a great job, or Marcello did a great job at personifying that, I thought.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think you're right. He's not, it's a good way of putting it, that he wasn't like I mean, maybe he was, as you mentioned, your father was in the seminary from the time he was 14. I mean, maybe he was that young, but you don't know this guy's backstory, but for whatever reason, he is a born priest. I mean, this is what he does. It's not that he can just easily give it up. And so, just for anyone who does what they love, I mean, in my case and in your case as actors, if someone offers you, a chance to work with your favorite filmmaker, let's say, and maybe you have to compromise something else, it would be hard to say no. And I think that's ultimately, what happens to Mastroanni, is that he loves what he does. I mean, to the point where she meets him under a circumstances that he clearly loves to help people. I mean, he was like working at night in a call suicide hotline, which is, she calls because she's suicidal over her first over her first finding out her boyfriend was married. And so that alone told me that he's someone who wants to help and help people. And even when she calls later, and the doctor takes the phone away because she had to go, he tracks her down, right? And he didn't know what he looked like her. He didn't know what she looked like at that point. He didn't know anything about her. He was going to say, oh, what's, how can I help this woman? I mean, what can I do for people and society, which is, not what just a good priest would do, but like a good person or anyone who's, works in social services, or the odd good politician, I suppose. So I just thought that, this guy's, I think she just at the end is like, another thing that could be interpreted from her reaction was like, this guy is a priest, there's nothing there's nothing I can do about it. It's like
disappointed when he arrived at her bed in the hospital to see that he's a priest. Like, why didn't you tell me? And he's the one that says, I mean, does that really change anything?
Right.
What do you expect? Like a movie star?
Yeah.
But I don't think I'm really going out on a ledge to suggest that men maybe more typically view things in the physical, and women tend to view things metaphysical. And so it's very telling of his character. You're right. He's I don't know, in a basement somewhere on a phone. He has no idea what this person looks like. And she's clearly attracted to his voice. And he's there trying, whoever it is. It even see later on when she tries to call the service again, and it's him, and she realizes that he's saying the same thing to whoever it is, because he probably gets a lot of people that call out of desperation and don't have the courage to go through with talking. And he has nothing to get out of that, so I think that that's very indicative of her as a woman that we may assume is more for the metaphysical, receiving someone who is altruistic and has metaphysical values, opposed to physical, carnal agendas or something like that. And then of course, what happens when she brings the physical to him, and he has trouble dealing with that. But at a sincere level, I think.
Yeah, well, and that's what also made it funny. I mean, to the point where you see he's attracted to her, and he's trying so hard to not be. When he wakes up in the night, he's like, dumps his head in water, right? And he's doing the rosary.
Like Raging Bull in the jail, like banging his head. Sophia Loren shows up and offers herself to you. And you're a priest of all people. If you can't get, I don't know, a hall pass for that, I don't know if there's any hall passes to be had. But you're right, it's very organically done. They're both sincere people who have this connection over something that is as real as suicide, potential suicide. And that's where I think that the heart is truly there. It's not just a guy. When my father became a priest, he became a priest in, I think, 1969. And the notion, first of all, the notion of there are things that just weren't in society's open vocabulary. In this movie, it's not just that you have a guy who, I don't know, just wants to do something right for society, get 3 square meals a day, and not be bothered by people's presumptions of him. All of a sudden meeting a beautiful goddess in a skirt that's too short. This is a guy who they bonded over something as real as her potential suicide, and his voice and his heart, and then facing the realities of humanity, that this is a woman that we have a connection with. We're both hot for each other. And what do I do?
Yeah, no, I absolutely. And you can't help but wonder if Risi was criticizing the church to an extent to say that this sort of rule that they can't marry or anything, or they can't have any sexual relationships is just going to lead to them hiding or repressing or having to really not show how they feel about these feelings that we all have that they have to ultimately oppress. I imagine that this was very controversial when it came out. I couldn't find much in terms of a critical response at the time. I don't know if you happen to.
I haven't. The Italians' relationship with the church is much more complicated than we as Italians in the States or in Canada may think. So I'm not really surprised that if the response of the movie in 1970, 71 wasn't necessarily as controversial as we think. I really don't know. I really couldn't find anything either. You certainly had people that thought it was problematic, as shown in that scene with that utility worker who's in the hole telling him off, about, what kind of representative of the church are you and whatnot.
Yeah. And even when he went to visit his parents, his mother just wouldn't, talk to him and basically, really threw them out. The only part that didn't quite work to me, I don't know how convincing her being suicidal was. I mean, not I shouldn't say the fact that the act of taking the pills before she calls him, but then when she calls him after she took the pills, and obviously they took her to the hospital, and then she tells him that after she heard his voice and he was so comforting and so right about everything, that she decided that she was going to kill herself anyways. And it was sort of vague. I didn't really understand what that was about. I don't know if that had raised any flags for you.
Yeah, it is kind of, I'm a writer, I write screenplays, and I often look at a movie and if it's something that, if it's an aspect of the plot or the narrative that I felt was so lazy that I wouldn't allow myself to get by with that, then I really find those things problematic. A lot of times in movies, you don't have a movie if you don't concede something. I don't know how difficult it would have been for her to say, I don't know, to have, well, if let's say she took all the pills before she called, well, really, what's the point of calling, because it's a done deal?
Yeah, that's what I didn't quite understand.
But then she doesn't end up in the hospital if she doesn't take the pills, and also that scene where she ends up in the pediatric wing because there's no room where she belongs was visually telling also, because for instance, the kid in the crib next to him, the toy keeps falling and hitting his head, and like 3 times he gives it back to the kid, and like the 4th time he just breaks it. and that also shows he is someone that is altruistic. However many times the kid annoys him, he's going to give the toy back, but at a certain point you just break the toy, and at a certain point he falls for her, and at a certain point and again, that's visual language that doesn't happen if they don't have that scene, and they don't have that scene if she does an overdose. But, maybe the script could have used another draft.
One thing I've noticed that Italian directors are really good at is utilizing every single character down to the background performers, to the most minor of character. I mean, everyone is always doing something very specific that adds to the scene. I mean, for example, when he moves in with her later, and this is interesting housewarming because all these priests are there and all these other like friends of hers, right? It's like this odd mix, and it's uncomfortable because he's showing them he shows them the bedroom, and all these priests are just staring, and then he kind of walks out, because in other words, they're thinking, oh, this is where they're gonna make love. And then one of them just hangs back for like 5 seconds, and this nun comes in and takes him out. And I just thought, what a great, again, just visually saying so much that the audience will put together what's happening and how those characters feel. And he had a few other occasions like that. I don't know if any of those moments popped out to you.
Absolutely. I'm so glad I was going to bring up that scene if you didn't. I remember I was less than 9. I must have been 8 years old, 7 years old. I remember my parents took me and my brothers to it was a seminary to spend the weekend. Again, growing up with two parents that were clergy, I grew up with these people in my lives. It wasn't a big deal for us to spend a weekend in a convent or a church or a seminary to visit friends or whatever. But my parents swore that we were invited. It was the week that they were all going to be ordained. And my parents swore that we were invited that week as a test because we were young rebel rousers as toddlers and young people, that if these guys saw what a load having all these kids is, that they'll be more inclined to happily go through with their ordination.
Oh, interesting.
But yeah, when you see these guys at the door and they're all stacked looking at the bed as if they don't have beds. But even much earlier than that, something that caught my attention was when she I think it's when she walks out of the bathroom that she locks herself in after almost killing her boyfriend. There's a couple of guys that walk in. One is extremely tall and the other is extremely small. And I thought that clearly is a choice.
For sure. Yeah.
And what is that? And it seems something that I think you'd see more likely in a Fellini movie, odd pairing.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, that's maybe that. And it's funny, Roger Ebert often said, if you think that's what it meant, it is. But
yeah.
And I thought, well, that may just show that the odd, an odd couple, and these are two guys who looks like they're.
Oh, yes, right.
But they're guys walking in right after
she has
to figure out, well, what do I do now?
Right, premonition for the future. So with them,
yeah, even subliminally, because you can't help but notice these two guys walking in. One is extremely short, one is extremely tall, just shooting the breeze. But stuff like that, or even where they're on the like the ferry, and his student, who's kind of counterculture, even as like, I don't know, a 9-year-old, is on the boat, and Mastroanni trips, he's kind of stumbling over himself, both visually as well as verbally, and he has to maintain appearances. He starts saying, oh yeah, you see that church is Saint whatever, and it was built in this time because the students right there. So whether it's that, or whether it's the scene where they're in that restaurant amid the other wedding that's going on, under the pretense that they're brother and sister.
Oh yeah.
This guy at the table is like, geez, man, your sister, she doesn't have a boyfriend, she's just not married. And she runs into a buddy. There's all this physical stuff going on that is seamless. I think.
It really is. I've noticed De Sica and of course Fellini were all, and I think the only other film I've seen of Risi that I love is Il Sorpasso. And he certainly in this film for sure really just could utilize so many characters and do some amazing things visually that brought out more of the main characters, just really added to the story.
I think Italian directors, American directors, at least since the Copacabana shot by Scorsese, they have a tradition of trying to one up each other, I think, in terms of how complex can we make this single take. And the beginning of Boogie Nights, and Italian directors, I think, have, at least in the period of, I don't know, say the directors we're talking about right now, have had this ability to use the landscape of the frame, background, middle ground, foreground, maybe a piazza in the center of town, or a hospital, or whatever, to show like a pastoral sort of tableau, with all these different characters and all edges of the frame doing something in terms of blocking, camera movement, to have a thematic resonance.
Another moment that surprised me and that I loved is that when she brings him over to meet her parents, and they don't know he's gonna be a priest, and I thought it was gonna be like a real fight, and I love how the father, at first he was sort of confused, and then he's like, hey, one less priest, one more asshole in the world, or something along those lines. I just love that.
but at first they are shocked, you know.
The mother particularly.
Drops, you know,
yeah.
The dad is like, "Was this a joke?" But
yeah.
you know, what is this, 2021? 12 years ago, or maybe 15 years ago, I was in Rome, and again, growing up with parents who were Catholic clergy, this stuff was just the air that I breathed, nothing really special. And I was in the Vatican. The Vatican is always been a place that I felt very at home with. It was always Rome was always a center base of operations for my family, spending our summers in Italy, in a convent with the nuns that were nuns with my mom just outside the Vatican. And about maybe 12 years ago or so, I was at the Vatican, and I decided to partake in the sacrament of confession. Okay, so I'm in there. I'm not going to tell you what I confessed to, but the guy asked me, when was my last confession? And you know, it had been a long time, and for whatever reason, I organically told him, well, the thing is, Father, you know, my father is a Roman Catholic priest. And he goes, no, it's not possible. I go, yeah, I said, and my mom was a Catholic nun. And his response was just, he goes, he stopped arguing. He didn't be like, oh, no way in hell. He was just like, oh. You know, I think, especially if you're in Italy, and mind you that in the States and North America, as Catholics, we've always been a minority. You know, it was a liability if you were a national politician, for instance, or whatnot, or if you were a movie star, for some reason being caught. Like I think Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn, it was a bigger deal because they were both Catholic.
Yeah, that's like JFK as well. I remember that was
a liability. But in Italy, I think they just take these things. It's still, you know, again, it makes the mom almost faint when she sees the guy is really a priest, not just religious, as Sophia says. And the dad's like, "What is this, a joke?" But I think it's so much a part of their life. And Italy is a country that history is so ingrained. I think Stanley Tucci said in his movie Big Night, when he's told, a lot of history, and he goes, oh, in Italy there's nothing but history, you know.
Right.
So I think that's indicative of just a contemporary Italian culture where he can freely say, you know, one less asshole or whatever.
He just sort of gave into it, right? Kind of like the priest that you spoke to. Out of curiosity, did your parents have to leave? Like, were they allowed to? Did they have to leave the church, or what happened in their position?
You know, it's interesting. It was interesting for me because throughout half the movie, he's talking about, am I going to get this permission from the Vatican and whatnot?
Yeah.
You know, my parents did not meet each other until they both left, and that, in a way, is even more remarkable than having met. Like, what are the odds? They're both Italian, both firstborn, both clergy, both named Joe. And so my father, he asked for permission from the Vatican, and he got it. And when I asked him what would he have done if he didn't get it, he said he would have left anyway. You know, religion holds such a sway over people.
Right.
But we talk about the Christian West. We're really the secular West. We're really the agnostic West. The church, and I think today's Pope Francis would be among the first to admit, we can't make you do anything. It's something that you have to come to. And my father knew from the time he was 5 years old that he wanted to be a priest. This wasn't an issue he had. He wasn't hiding. But as someone who was a heterosexual man who believed in marriage, and he felt the calling to potentially have a family as strongly as he felt the calling to be a spiritual leader. And he, like is kind of hinted at in the movie, might suggest as a point of discussion, which John the 23rd totally put the kibosh on, even a point of discussion, the notion that maybe it would be healthy if we had spiritual leaders not a million miles away from rabbis who are fathers, or may very well be fathers, not just called father, who are members of the community, literally going through the same meat and potatoes issues that everyone else is going through. And it's not like the church's tradition of priesthood started with celibacy anyway.
Right.
That's where my father came, his point of view. And most people don't realize this, Catholics don't realize this, that there's really nothing you can do to no longer be a priest once you are one. My father was laicized, but as opposed to, say, Protestant religions where, I mean, no offense, but it's basically a curriculum you go through, and you are now accredited as a reverend or a minister. In the Catholic Church, it's believed that your soul has changed and become someone that can perform a sacrament, turning blood into the wine into the blood of Christ, etc. And you really cannot cease being one, even if you're granted the permission to live as a person. With nuns, you know, like a lot of things, it's sexist. You can join, you can leave. You don't have any power, even when you are a nun, and you can just leave. But that was the predicament of my parents, and in the movie, he can definitely.
It's very much the same thing with Mastroanni, right? Like he is who he is, as you were saying,
But it's very telling of who he is, that you know, he can legitimately, and I hate saying tempted with his promotion, but if you're someone who is coming from such an organic notion of you know, he says that his faith is his faith. It's not something he's running away from. He has a real calling. The notion that, wow, this is a shot to really have a place in the curia at Rome, if that's what he's being promoted to, and really be in the thick of it. And he's presented with, a lot of people have a problem with the end because it's not purely comedy. I don't. I think that the director is really taking to task.
I love the end.
The church and society and the viewer, that what do they do now? You know, they are in love. They are authentic, coming at it from a religious perspective and a person-to-person secular perspective. And what do we do now? So I really admire the ending.
Me too. I couldn't agree more. I thought it was. I thought it was just perfect. And, you know, I think why people don't like it is because they're expecting comedy, you know, and this is a much more, this is bigger than purely a laugh, you know.
Or they want to see, you know, two huge movie stars, I don't know, being happy and
getting together,
you know. I think it's much more intriguing, the question, what do you think they do?
I'm glad I finally saw it, because you know, again, it is not something in this Mastroanni and Loren conversation that is not a film that is discussed that often. And as we both said, it's not on any streaming services. It's very hard to find, even just like critical discussion. So
it may not be as exportable as some of their other stuff, you know. Because again, during this time, it was still kind of a liability to be Catholic. In the States, it wasn't as sellable.
That's true.
Obviously, as in Italy, and it's already niche. If you're an Italian foreign language movie, especially then, it was already a niche product. So, it may not have been the most popular thing in the American market. I really don't know, because, you know, Warner Brothers, I think, distributed it. So maybe I'm wrong, but it's interesting. I think even the Wikipedia page doesn't even tell.
There's nothing. No one could find any information on this.
You know, it's too late for him. I would really wonder what Sophia would have to say about making that movie, the time it was like, and what the reception was.
I would love to know. So anyone watching this who may be talking to Sophia Loren one day, ask her. Well, Joe, such a pleasure as always. So, you know, thanks so much for taking the time to come out and talk about the priest's wife today. I really appreciate it. And I know I follow you on social media, but where's the best place for people to find you?
The best place for people to find me and what I'm about would be on Instagram at Zio Cinema. You just get a good sense of who I and my filmmaking and life partner are, snippets of our work, and what we're all about.
Okay, great. And I'll leave the links to where you can find Joe in the description box below, and your website as well, Zio Chicho. I'll leave that. And there's a trailer for Joe's short film, Amore Latino. That's in the Instagram, on your Instagram channel. There's a really great trailer for it that I really love. That really reminded me of the either new wave or Italian new wave, that time. So yeah, check that out if you haven't already seen it. Okay, great.
Thanks, Robert. It was great. Thanks for having me.
No, my pleasure. Please come again.
Will do.
Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. If you're currently listening to this podcast on the audio version, there is a lot more episodes on the YouTube channel. So if you've run out of episodes to listen to on the audio version, go to youtube.com/Robert Bellissimo at the movies, where every single one of my podcast episodes has been uploaded to. I also have a Patreon membership, which is a small fee per month that really helps out creators in order to keep making content on YouTube for free. For those of you who are subscribing or tuning in on Patreon, which is bonus content that I put out each and every month. It is based on polls that you can vote on. So you're very much a part of the decision making. And I do performance reviews, noir or not videos, and I do various different content that is similar to the YouTube channel, but somewhat different. So head over to patreon.com/Robert Bellissimo at the movies to get the full details on how to become a member. And lastly, if this is your first time here, please consider subscribing by pressing the Robert Bellissimo at the movies logo that you will see floating above my head right here to your top left in just a second. Just click on that and then click the bell in order to get a notification every time I release a new video or when I go live. Thank you so much, folks. I will see you in the next episode.